Chad Hasty Show, News Talk 95.1 FM and 790 AM KFYO. Time to turn our attention to the world of politics. And it was an interesting weekend. Joining us right now, GOP political strategist, it's Matt Mackowiak. Matt, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing great, Chad. Good morning. How are you doing?
Doing great. Appreciate you coming on. Before we get into politics, obviously we've all been keeping an eye on what's happening in Austin, and I know you are keeping an eye, of course, on your hometown there. What is the feeling like with the explosions that have happened over the last 2 weeks now? What's the feel like among folks down in Austin?
Yeah, it's a little bit surreal. There doesn't appear to be a motive. There was a question about whether there was a racial motive, given that the first two victims were African American, and apparently their families knew each other. But in this case, this fourth explosion that happened last night, there was obviously just two, I think, white victims who were injured, but appear to be okay. So, look, I mean, this is very unusual for Austin. I mean, we're obviously a growing city. We're basically the 11th largest city in the United States, and so you're going to have problems other cities have when you get to be that size. But generally, we don't have these kinds of things happen, and it's unsettling. Obviously the first three were on the east side of I-35 in East Austin, but this one last night was in Southwest Austin, down in kind of a mid-level type of area called Travis Country off of Southwest Parkway, and there's a lot of young families down there. I texted 4 or 5 different people that I knew that lived kind of down in that area last night. So, yeah, it's certainly unsettling, and it's not clear that there are any real leads, and so I don't really know where this goes from here.
Yeah, well, we're keeping everyone in Austin in our thoughts and prayers, and hopefully they catch this person or these people who are carrying out these acts, because it's scary. It's definitely a scary situation.
Absolutely.
Matt, let's get into the world of politics. The president over the weekend tweeting about Robert Mueller and Andrew McCabe. Andrew McCabe, of course, was fired on Friday. Kind of put all of this in perspective. Where are we right now in the Trump administration, and as the FBI turns?
Yeah, it certainly feels like this thing is coming to a head, doesn't it? There's just so much out there that's floating around. There are times where I kind of feel like this thing is sputtering. There's still no hard evidence of collusion between the campaign and Russia or Russians. There have obviously been some indictments of Russian nationals and of some individuals who were either engaged in illegal lobby practices or lying to the feds, but you haven't had other problems. And so part of me kind of thinks, look, if you were the President of the United States and you saw this story kind of consuming your presidency and trying to sort of delegitimize your election, you could understand why that would be very, very frustrating every single day. On the other hand, it also appears that the inquiry is becoming more serious. The fact that Mueller has now subpoenaed Trump Organization documents, the fact that he got Rick Gates to flip, you just kind of have to wonder, this is all coming to a head. Are they pursuing an obstruction case? Are they pursuing some type of financial crimes case? Could it be both? We don't know. We don't know. And so, my guess is this thing is moving forward, and maybe the next thing that we're going to hear about is the vice president be questioned, and the president would follow after that, perhaps the next few weeks. But look, as it relates to McCabe, I'm not thrilled. I kind of agree with Marco Rubio. I don't think the timing is ideal to fire someone 48 hours before their full pension becomes applicable. That seems mean-spirited. On the other hand, this is the Office of Professional Responsibility at the Justice Department. These are Justice Department career officials who reviewed the Inspector General's findings and found that McCabe both authorized illegal leaks to the media coincidentally about the Clinton Foundation last year, number one. And then number two, lied about it when he was asked about it by Justice Department investigators. And for the FBI, they treat lying differently than most people do. Most people don't care if you lie in your job, perhaps. But in the FBI, I mean, your reputation is everything. And so firing McCabe was actually a pretty standard response to what the Office of Professional Responsibility found. Again, I know it looks bad, and now McCabe has memos that he's turned over to Mueller, so who knows what those memos say. So, look, I mean, this thing seems to be getting worse in both directions, and I really don't know where it's headed from here.
So in the case of McCabe, is it just politics when you see people like Comey and others who are saying that this was, and Democrats who are saying that this was the bad move, and firing him, whether timing or not is the bad move, but just firing him seems to be the issue among a lot of people, is that it was the wrong thing to do. If that's standard operating procedure, it seems to me that that's the right move to make, is firing the guy.
You're in a position now, Chad, where both sides presume the worst in terms of the motives of the other side, right?
Right.
The Comey side of it feels like obstruction is taking place. The president's trying to lay the predicate to fire Mueller. Trump, on the other hand, looks at it and sees, McCabe's wife running for state senate in Virginia, receiving $500,000 from Terry McAuliffe's PAC. Terry McAuliffe very closely associated with the Clintons. So both sides are doubting the other's motives, and so you're going to have sort of overreactions on both sides. Look, if it were up to me, I mean, I just don't see why the president should be tweeting about this subject. I really don't think it helps. I'm sure it drives his lawyers crazy. I kind of agree with what Trey Gowdy said over the weekend. Yeah. I forget which Sunday show he was on. But he was kind of telling the president's lawyer, if you're not guilty, your client should act like it. And again, I totally understand the frustration that Trump feels. I really do. But sort of some of the ways that he reacts to these things, he reacts sort of viscerally in an emotional way when really the rational response is what would be best for him. So again, I don't know where this thing is headed. I mean, Mueller knows more, has talked to more people, has more information, probably by a factor of 1,000 than anyone realizes. I heard over the weekend that even though he subpoenaed the Trump Organization documents, I heard someone credible on television that he probably already has them, that he's just trying to see if the Trump Organization is going to fully comply. I mean, that's the kind of level that I think we're looking at here.
What is the case now? The White House, I think yesterday, put out another release saying the president is not considering firing Mueller. He's not talking about that. We're not in that area at all right now. So we'll take them at face value that they're not even thinking about firing Robert Mueller. What is the case of keeping Mueller on and not firing him, and what's the case to fire him?
Well, I think firing Mueller is a real disaster. I agree with Lindsey Graham. I think it's the beginning of the end of the Trump presidency.
Really?
Whether you think Mueller is doing this fairly or not, we have special counsels for these situations. I mean, the real frustration, I'm sure, is the creation of the special counsel in the first place. I mean, once you put them in place, it's very hard to get rid of them until they complete their work, and their incentive is to go as long as they want to make sure that they don't miss anything, because if they miss some type of crucial evidence, it would be reputationally damaging. So, I just think that if he were to fire, first of all, people talk about firing Mueller. I mean, Trump can't just fire Mueller with a tweet. He has to direct the Deputy Attorney General who has oversight to do that. I don't think Rosenstein would likely do that. He would probably resign. You had the number 3 Rachel Brand in place, although she resigned just a couple months ago to take a corporate job. So I don't even know who the new number 3 is at the Justice Department. So you could have a situation where you have a Saturday Night Massacre type situation at the Justice Department where he keeps firing people until he finds someone who's willing to fire Mueller. I just think Republicans on the Hill are not. Do not believe that firing Mueller under any circumstances is acceptable, and it would cause, I think, a constitutional crisis unlike anything we've seen certainly since the days of Nixon. Now, if you had really hard evidence that Mueller was acting with impropriety or acting without integrity or things like that, that would be a different situation. That's not where we are. What Mueller has done is any time any questions have been brought up about anyone, he's taken those people off the inquiry. Certainly did that when the text messages came out. He did that as it related to a couple other individuals. So, again, I just think firing Mueller is really a non-starter, and I don't know anyone that thinks that that's a reasonable step for Trump to take. Now, he may feel like he has to do that at some point. Again, that's the thing that's so difficult here. He wants to get rid of this issue because he knows it's consuming his presidency, and it's beginning to come closer to the family, given that both Don Jr. and Jared Kushner have personal legal liability.
Yeah, but I mean that in my opinion that was expected to happen. Once you hire a special counsel, they can do anything they want. They've got it's not just about collusion. Everything was going to be opened up. Before I let you go, Matt, and you've said, and I've seen this in other places, that it would be the beginning of the end of his presidency. Does that mean Republicans and Democrats would somehow gang up together to impeach him, or that they'd go shopping for a new candidate come 2020?
I think it'd be the former. And I mean, look, we're obviously talking about an amazing scenario. I don't bring this up lightly, but I do think that there would be a rush to move towards impeachment if that were to happen. Again, it would depend on the circumstances. If he had to fire several people in order to fire Mueller, that would look even worse, I think. It would depend on what reason he would provide for firing him. Again, if he had some type of hard evidence that really did result or explain the firing. It can't just be, I don't like this thing, or it's gone on too long, or, it bothers me. I mean, that's not a good enough reason. But so I do think that's the bridge too far for most Republicans on Capitol Hill, which is why I don't think it's going to happen. I really don't. Yeah. I don't doubt that the White House is trying to, and the legal team in some way is trying to sort of marginalize or undermine the Mueller inquiry. I don't doubt that that's a strategic goal that they have. But yeah, I don't think they're going to fire him. I really don't. I just don't see it happening. I think it'd be hard to do, very hard to defend. And even for Trump, I think it's a step beyond anything he could ultimately do.
Matt, tell folks how they can sign up for your newsletter and your podcast as well, where you have a really big guest on.
Yeah, the newsletter that we produce every weekday morning is called Must Read Texas. We pull all the top news from around the state, put it in one email in a summarized format. 3,000 Texans receive it every day. You can sign up for a 1-week free trial at mustreadtexas.com. And yeah, I have a podcast, 74 episodes in. We just completed an episode with Jonah Goldberg, the senior editor at National Review and the New York Times bestselling author and Fox News contributor. You can find our podcast, which is called Mac on Politics, on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and on the web at maconpoliticspodcast.com.
Very good. Matt, thank you very much. We'll visit with you next week.
Have a great week. See ya.
See ya. That's Matt Mackowiak.